Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can always become a member of the show. Thanks to the many of you who have already joined. And I have had a couple videos up now for the members only. One was a private Zoom, was about 40 minutes last week with a few members that now all the members can watch. And one was just a couple minute snippet video on a kind of a coaching staff search update. And so there you go. Those are up there. Appreciate everybody's doing that. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. So today I'm joined by my ESPN colleague in Arizona, Josh Weinfuss, who's going to fill us in on Kliff Kingsbury. Now, Kingsbury didn't come here to be a head coach, but he came here to be a very good offensive, or they hope he came here to be a very good offensive coordinator. So Josh is going to fill us in on what he witnessed from covering Kingsbury for his tenure there, and why he thought the offenses struggled in the second half of some of those seasons, or why the team kind of would peter out toward the end of years. And he has his own theories. I'm going to bring on more people throughout the offseason to talk about his offense, because I think it's kind of unique, but I think it's also a big part of what has to go well here. So I want to have Josh in to bring some insight. And just before I get in there, and I talked to somebody after I recorded the interview with Josh about what he thought. This is a defensive coach, what he thought about Kingsbury's offense. And there are a lot of things I think he liked about it. And I think, felt like they could do things that they really good at creating. Kingsbury's really good at creating mismatches and taking advantage of situations, and taking advantage. Like, you can go into 4 receiver sets. If you counter a certain way, he's going to run the ball. You can go into heavy sets. If you counter a certain way, he's going to throw the ball. Just basic. That's a basic rundown of it, but he likes it. But I asked him about the second half issues with the Cardinals, and this person felt that it was as much because maybe the offense leaves a quarterback vulnerable to more hits, and perhaps they start to wear down the second half. Just something to kind of follow. And it's going to be something I ask other people. And I'm hoping that I can have some people on here who have actually played in that system, who can give me even better insight. And then not just me, but you, better insight. So stay tuned for Josh for a minute. And then one other thing I did want to talk about, because, for some reason, if you say too many, if you kind of relay positive things about Dan Quinn, for some reason people get upset, I guess, because, we're not telling you have to like him, but we're just telling you what people say about him. And people say good things about the coach of the team that you root for. So I apologize for that. Anyways, today it was Kyle Shanahan from the Super Bowl. And he was asked that. He coached with Quinn for a couple of years, worked with Adam Peters. So keep in mind, when I talk about this situation, it's not just about a coach. It's about the setup. The setup wins. They've had good coaches here in the past. They don't win. Why? Because the setup sucked. That's why. So the setup right now, you go into this offseason saying they're in a good place because of it. And that's what Shanahan kind of pounced on. He said, and he was asked that, he goes, I'm so pumped for Washington. They got a hell of a coach. They've gone through a lot the last 20 years. But hiring AP, meaning Adam Peters, and DQ, Dan Quinn, is as good as it gets. And he talked about how grateful he was for Quinn when he was coaching with him for the 2 years in Atlanta. And somebody asked him what stood out about Quinn. And he said that it's the way he carries himself, the way he talked to the team was as good as anyone I've been around. So that's pretty big stuff, because he's been around some pretty damn good people in that way, including his dad. So anyways, we don't know if the guy's going to win, but this is consistent with what I've heard throughout this process from more than 15 people that I've talked to. So again, still got to get a quarterback, still got to build the staff, long way to go, but the organization is set up better than it has been in recent years. I'm going to get into more differences, because you're hearing some more things when people compare one regime to another, and why, anyways, we'll get into more of that later. And again, you don't have to fall for it. I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm just relaying information, because my job isn't to say you should believe in him. It's more so like, is this a good setup? Yes, it is. This is what people say. So, you can then make up your own mind. And here's the beauty of this entire thing. In the fall, we will know if it works or not. So there you go. Anyways, that's it. Let's get to Kliff Kingsbury. So here's my conversation with ESPN Cardinals reporter Josh Weinfuss. Josh, you know Kliff Kingsbury as well as anybody's going to know him because you covered him for his tenure out in Arizona. And I know Washington's not hiring him as a head coach, clearly, or didn't hire him as a head coach. But as an offensive mind, you watched that offense in the NFL. What are your general impressions of Kingsbury as an offensive coach?
I think this is the best situation that he could be in. I don't think he was cut out to be a head coach. I think just the overall management of an NFL team, I think, was just a little too much for him. Because when he was here in Arizona for those 4 years, he was the offensive coordinator. He was essentially the de facto quarterbacks coach, and he was the head coach. So that's three pretty significant jobs, especially the head coach when you're trying to be that CEO as well as a coordinator, and then you're trying to handle Kyler Murray as a quarterback and a rookie Kyler Murray. Get him through all of that, and then you threw in kind of all the obstacles of the COVID years and the learning on Zoom. Like, it was just a lot. And I think he's better suited and cut out to be just an offensive guy. And he has a very impressive, talented offensive mind. I think he learned a lot about being calling plays in the NFL, designing plays in the NFL, running an offense in the NFL, that I think he will benefit him this time around.
And so some of those, like the air raid, has the reputation of being a very pass-heavy attack, right? And spread the field, man-to-man coverage, just attack. That's not how it seemed to unfold in Arizona. And I know like the stats where I think it's like, I think I have these, I know they're right. I think, but it's like 10th during his tenure in Arizona, 10th in total rush attempts. I think it's 9th in yards per carry and 11th in yards per game, something along they may be reversed, but it's something along those lines. So what's your take on that part?
Here's the thing. When Kliff Kingsbury runs the air raid, it's his version of the air raid, right? Because the traditional air raid is 5 wide, 10 personnel. You're doing it all, like that's all you're running. And he, even going back to his time at Texas Tech, he had a run-based version of the air raid, which is rare. You don't see that a lot. I think he had 1,000-yard rusher or 2,000-yard rushers in his 6 years at Texas Tech. You already had the stats on the running game in the NFL. His time in the NFL. So he knows in order to win at this level that you have to run the ball. And so it's not a traditional air raid. It has a lot of components of the air raid. They will go 3 wide. They will utilize their X receiver quite a bit, and they will throw the ball over the top as much as they can. But the one thing that I think his issue was as a play caller and a play designer is his stuff got stale mid-season every year. And once teams figured out what they were doing with that iteration of the roster and they adjusted, he never counter-adjusted. And that was an issue for this entire time here. And I think if he's learned from that, if Dan Quinn maybe pushes him a little bit to do that more, if the need arises, I think we could see some changes. But to me, that's the biggest issue with hiring Kliff Kingsbury is nothing really changed as the year went on.
And I was going to ask you about that because the numbers are pretty clear, but the 1-loss record with the offense and all that is exactly that. When you were there and you guys would clearly ask him about it, what would he say as the reason why that never evolved? Because you would think if he's going to learn it, if he didn't learn it there, why would he learn it here?
Well, the answer we would typically get is, oh, we're making adjustments. We're making adjustments. And we're like, not really making adjustments, right? Like we could see it. Like everyone could see it. They were really good in the first half of the season. And his teams were like that in college. So it's not just a one-off in the NFL. It was a trend. So I think if it were to change, it would be because he doesn't have to worry about running an entire organization. He can just focus on one thing. The man loves film. People think he's this party guy, this bro, this frat bro. And I mean, honestly, like he gets to the facility between 3:30 and 4:30 probably 4:30 is late. So around 3:34 every single morning. And he'll get his workout in and he'll just turn on the film and then just watch film. Watch tape after tape after tape. And it's not just of what his teams are doing. He loves scouring college film to come up with plays here or there. He'll watch other NFL film day and night, just do what everyone's doing. He's a big trend guy. So he's very well versed, right? He's very well educated in what's being ran around the country in all levels. He loves finding stuff like D3 schools in the middle, like Abilene Christian, like stuff like that. He'll find stuff everywhere, NAIA schools. So I think that maybe this is the time for him to kind of just focus on that and not have to worry about in colleges recruiting. In the NFL, it was just management of people on both sides of the ball. So I think that this could be an opportunity for him to just laser in on that. And I mean, will he change? I don't know, but I think this is the best opportunity for us to see possible change from Kingsbury.
And you say that because he's obviously, people consider him a good looking guy. And I'll be honest, Josh, I had to battle that early in my career as well. People always just kind of looked at me and just assumed one thing as like, I'm a grinder. So
I'm still dealing with it. I'm still dealing with it. People look at this face and they're like, that man does not work. He just parties all the time.
Yeah. I mean, so we can all relate to what Kliff Kingsbury, the reputation,
100%.
But it is like, would you talk to like some of the offensive guys? Would they ever get frustrated with that? Would they talk about that? The adjustments?
Would talk about it.
Well, the quarterback is another topic. We'll get to that in a minute. But what about some of the non-quarterback guys? Did they have issues with anything, how the offense was run or evolved?
Yeah, I mean, of course, because when you start off hot and you just fall off a cliff, no pun intended, like the last half of their season's bottomed out. They went in tailspins every year. So of course there's frustration. Of course people get annoyed that the offense isn't working. So guys are frustrated. There's no doubt about it. In 2010 season, no, not 2010, 2021 season, when they went, what did they start? Like 7-0 or 9-0 or 10-2, whatever it evolved to. And then, I mean, Kyler Murray was in the conversation for MVP. You had Kliff Kingsbury in the conversation for Coach of the Year by mid-year, and they had the best record in football. I mean, they were on pace if they had kept that up to have the number one overall seed in the NFC. And then their season just went.
Well, Josh, if it was like that, how were players? I mean, would they get frustrated with did they consider it lack of adjustments, or how did they handle it?
Well, for starters, his quarterback, Kyler Murray, was very vocal about the lack of adjustments. And
we'll get to him in a minute.
Yeah, that relationship soured. But like beyond Kyler, like, yeah, I mean, when you start out really good every year and then you go into a tailspin in the second half of the season, fall off the proverbial quote unquote cliff, no pun intended, like guys did get frustrated. And guys were not shy about telling us, mostly off the record, about, how it was annoying, it was frustrating. They would start so well. And when teams would figure out what they were doing, Kliff would just not counter adjust, like we talked about. And guys got annoyed by that, especially when, 2021, they start, was it 7-0? I think they went to 9-0. Then they went to 10-2. Kyler was in the conversation for MVP. Kliff was in the conversation for Coach of the Year. They had the best record in football after 12 games, I think it was. And they were, if they were in the best record in football, they were definitely, they were sitting atop the NFC. And then that season just fell apart. Nothing they could do was right. Everyone had them figured out. And I put that on the head coach, especially when you're the offensive play caller and the defenses around the league are figuring you out. Like, that's on you to adjust. And that wasn't happening. Guys got very frustrated.
Did they what did they think about playing for him? And especially more so from an offensive. And I know the hard part is they knew him as a head coach. So as you said, like sometimes you're a head coach, you got all these other responsibilities. Do you have time to then focus on that? So, but how, what was it like for them with him outside of Kyler? Because again, that's a whole separate chapter.
Guys loved playing with him because they felt he was a true player's coach, right? That he was very in tune with their needs, their time. He respected their time. He did not kind of force any of the BS extra stuff on them. He wasn't big on mottos. He's a quiet guy to begin with, right? So it was very business-like. He'd come into his meetings, he'd talk about what he needed to talk about, and he'd get out. And guys really respected that, especially guys with families, older guys who had kids. They really appreciated that. So guys loved playing for him, but the results just weren't there.
And then one of the things here, like Washington went from Scott Turner, who, guys liked, but they didn't really like the offense after a while, and he wasn't really a disciplinarian or anything like that. Then you go to Bieniemy, who's kind of the opposite. Neither one of them worked. So, in terms of practices, he is an energetic guy. Is he like, how is he on the field? How is he in terms of the teaching and all that? And I don't know how much you can speak to that.
Yeah, so it's interesting because when he was here in Arizona, he spent so much time with the offense that it honestly felt like when he would go walk over to the defensive side practice during the open portions where we're allowed to watch, I felt it was forced. I felt like he was trying to make an effort to show everyone, hey, I'm the actual head coach. I watch the defense too. When he'd go right back and watch Kyler in the offense run. Like that's why I said in the beginning, like, excuse me, like this is perfect for him because all he could do is focus on the offense. Like there's a lot of layers to this, right? Like so it's like not just that. He doesn't have to worry about anything else, right? In college, he hated recruiting. So there's not like that part of this. It's just all football, all the time, all offense, all the time, all quarterbacks, all the time. Like that's why I think this is a great move for him because he doesn't have to worry about all the other stuff. And I think that when it comes down to it, the Commanders have the second overall pick. If there's one thing that Kliff Kingsbury does better than most other people, maybe outside of Bruce Arians, another former Arizona guy, is develop quarterbacks. He did it with, Patrick Mahomes. Briefly did it with Baker Mayfield. Briefly did it with Kyler Murray. Like he knows how to get the most out of his quarterbacks, and I think that the Commanders are obviously sitting at 2. The quarterback's probably atop their draft board in some order. That if you're going to draft a quarterback as a franchise, he's probably one of the better people you can get to mentor and coach them and teach them.
What do you think he'd look for in a quarterback most? Because listen, the connection, there's obviously a connection to Caleb Williams. I think that's a little bit of a jump in the gun to assume they're going to go up there, but you also have Drake May and Jaden Daniels. What would he look for in a quarterback?
It's interesting because all his quarterbacks, well, Davis Webb isn't quite cut from the same mold, and neither is Case Keenum. Basically, I was going to say that he wants some guys who can do both, run and sit in the pocket. But really, like, if you have a big arm, you could work under Kliff Kingsbury. I mean, Case Keenum, when he worked with him at Houston over a decade ago, and he made Case Keenum into one of the most prolific passers in that NCAA history. And obviously, that had a lot to do with the air raid offense. But like, if you can, but just shows he can do anything. I mean, he made Johnny Manziel into Johnny Manziel. So if you have a big arm and you're somewhat mobile, Kliff Kingsbury will make it work for you. Obviously, the NFL is a totally different game than college. We get that, but he can still figure out how to take advantage of that. And I think that the way he sees plays develop, the way he designs plays, the way he knows how to take advantage of a quarterback's strength, I think you could really put any of those 3 guys with Kliff, and I think he will make it work.
And, I mean, how important is the running aspect? Because obviously you saw Kyler. Kyler can run. We see that, right? But is that going to be, how often would he talk about that ability?
We talked about that a lot with him over the 4 years because it got to the point where we felt like, and I think players did talk about it, how there was a reliance on Kyler's legs to get that offense going, where if he didn't move, that offense is stagnant. And at one point they said they wanted to treat Kyler's legs as a luxury. Well, you can only do that for so long if nothing's going and you need plays to be made and you need things to open up. And it went from a reliance to a luxury back to a reliance. And I mean, here's the thing: like Kyler is such an anomaly. And there's only, I mean, really, there's 2 other guys in the league, maybe one other guy, Lamar Jackson, who could truly make plays like Kyler. Yeah. And I would put Kyler quicker than him, right? He's much smaller than Lamar, but because of his size, I mean, you watch him. There were a couple plays after he came back this season where it legitimately looked like he's playing a video game, and you're just hitting the C button, that afterburner, and he just takes off. So like working with Kyler is an anomaly. So, but if you get Caleb, he can move, he can run, he's not as fast, but he can make plays with his feet, and then he can turn those plays with his feet into plays with his arm. And I think that really works well for Kliff Kingsbury's scheme.
Yeah, and that'll be curious to see. So what happened with he and Kyler? It's a long answer. And I know, like, there's a reason why some of those clauses were in that contract. But anyways.
So how much time
Cliff's Notes version.
So
Cliff's Notes version.
with a K, right? So long story short, they just stopped getting along and they stopped talking. And it was a lot because of how Kyler he felt he was being basically treated. Like Kyler wanted to be coached. He wanted to be coached hard, and Kliff treated him like he gave him the white glove treatment. He never really came down on him. I had people tell me from Kyler's past that like his head coach would get on him. He would drop F-bombs on him, like Lincoln Riley did in college on him. And Kliff never did it. He never was hard on him. And I think that really rubbed Kyler the wrong way. Kyler wanted that, and that just never came. And I think Kyler also got very, very, very frustrated with how this offense just kept sputtering and sputtering and sputtering. And all these little things never change year after year. And Kyler just got so frustrated with that relationship fractured. And like, who are you going to keep? The $250 million man, or $250 million quarterback, or the head coach you can pay off for $10 million over a few years and call it a day?
Last thing then, future NFL aspirations for Kingsbury. Do you think, because my one thing would be, if it works well here, is he going to be in demand somewhere else? Or is he a guy that they could have for 4 or 5 years if it works with Dan Quinn?
I think his nature is to take the opportunities that they arise. Like, I think we talked about the reports yesterday that he was only offered a 2-year deal with the Raiders, but he wanted a 3-year deal.
Right.
And that's what he got with the Commanders. Correct. Like, first off, he's very financially savvy. So if he knows there's a situation he can get in that will end up giving him more money in the long run, like, I don't think he cares what anyone else thinks. So, like, I think, if you're going into a new situation like this and you're kind of part of a rebuild, like, you might not last more than 2 years. So if you can get that 3rd year in a deal and get that guaranteed money eventually, that's that's Kliff Kingsbury to a T. But if you can become a head coach and get another 5-year guaranteed contract, $4 or $5 million a year, and unless it only works out for 3 or 4 years, you get that extra money. Like,
Josh, the one concern, Josh, I would have is, or not concern, if it goes well, guys always get hired as an OC to be a head coach. He's got the experience. What kind of NFL aspirations do you think he would have, or do you think do you think NFL teams would be interested in him if it goes that well?
It's a kind of a complicated answer, right? And there's a few layers to this. One, I think NFL teams tend to have short memories, right? They're, as Ted Lasso would put it, they're goldfish. So I think if they were to, if Kingsbury were to have success with whoever the quarterback is in Washington, I think that would lead an owner to saying, hey, let's give this guy another shot. Would that be the right decision? I don't know, because when he was a head coach, sure, he was a first-time head coach. He learned a ton. So I'm sure those 4 years are going to be very valuable next time he does it. But there's, I don't think these guys change a ton. I think NFL head coaches are very regimented, very rigid in their approach. And I don't see him changing a ton in his second tenure as a head coach if it were to happen. With all that being said, though, I do think he's also financially savvy. I think that's why he wanted the 3rd year in Washington, just in case it doesn't go well. He gets that money. I think if he's a head coach, he gets another 4 or 5 year deal, makes $4 or $5 million a year. If it doesn't go well, he still gets paid, right? Like, he's made a ton of money his whole career. He's always fallen upward, right? He goes from a sub 500 head coach in college to an NFL job where he struggles at, to coaching the best quarterback in college, to becoming an NFL offensive coordinator, won by 2 teams. Like, I wish all our careers would fall upwards like that, but I do think that, like, to answer your question directly, like, yes, I do think that if he were to get offers and it was the right offer, he would take it.
Josh, I appreciate you joining me. I think you're at the Phoenix Open, you said, right? So I appreciate that. And so love the insight. Thanks a lot, man.
Anytime, John.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Josh for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back with another episode on Thursday morning, so I'll talk to you next time.